Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Cooper, and I'm so excited to be filming today. I'm filming a little bit early today because this Saturday I'm going to be in Oregon for a race. I'm running a race with my dad, and I am so excited. I've been training for this race for probably about 5 months, maybe close to that. I don't know, but a long time. It's been a long time coming. And with that being said, I think I want to talk about consistency because I think consistency and motivation can often get confused, and it's a little bit hard to understand the difference, but they're very different because motivation comes and goes. You're not always going to be motivated, but consistency does not depend on motivation. And I think that's something that's super, super important to remember because, when I've done this many times, but, at night I'll get motivated all of a sudden and I'll be like, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. I'm going to go to the gym, get all my stuff done early. And then 6 a.m. rolls around, my alarm goes off, and I'm not feeling it. The motivation is gone. And I think that's where people get lost because they think that they should do stuff only when they're motivated, but that's not really the case. Sometimes we have to push ourselves and we have to do things that we don't want to do and we're not feeling motivated to do. So yeah, I wanted to talk about consistency in multiple different parts of life and just go over it and discuss my own experiences with it. So the first aspect of consistency is the physical aspect. So working out, being consistent in your training or eating healthily, things like that. I think this is what people think of the most when they think of consistency because, it's like, I need to work out this many days. I need to lose this amount of weight. I need to gain this amount of muscle. I need to reach this amount of protein every day. Stuff like that, people, I think, focus on a lot. But the reality is sometimes you're going to have to do it when you're not motivated. Every time you go out and you work out, you're not going to feel like it. That's the reality. Even if you absolutely love what you do, even if you're a pro athlete, there are going to be days where you don't want to practice the sport you're in. It's just how life goes. And I have seen that so many times throughout my running career specifically. I say career like I'm like some professional, but just like throughout the time that I've been running, I see that constantly. And I remind myself of this rule of thirds. And I saw a YouTuber talk about this, but it's basically the idea that your runs are going to be split into three. 1/3 of the time, your runs are going to be absolutely great. You're going to feel like you're flying. You are going to feel like running is super easy. And that's wonderful. The next third is runs that just feel meh. They don't feel bad, but they don't feel good. You're just kind of there. And then the last third is when you just feel horrible. And the reality is you're going to feel horrible sometimes, but consistency is showing up even when it feels horrible. Even when you don't want to do it, when you're not motivated at all, it's showing up anyways. And that's the difference between, regular athletes versus pro athletes, because regular athletes only show up sometimes. Pro athletes show up every time. They are consistent. And I think that is so important. And like with training for races, which I've been training for races on and off for about 5 or 6 years. And it's not about having your best run or best workout every single week or every single time you're working out. It's about consistently showing up and doing it again. Even when it hurts, even when you're tired, even when it doesn't always feel good. It's about showing up anyways. And I think that's so important. And the same thing can go for diet. I think it's not about perfection. I think a lot of people take it to an extreme and they're like, I have to only eat greens, vegetables, and meat, chicken and rice all the time. But it's like, I think there is also a balance there of, if you've ever heard of the 80-20 rule, it's like 80% of the time, yes, eat very healthy, eat the chicken and rice, vegetables, fruit, things like that. But 20% of the time, allow yourself to have fun. because if you're not allowing yourself some wiggle room, it's going to lead to burnout and it's not going to be fun. And you're not going to be able to maintain it because you can't maintain such a strict diet all the time. You can't maintain a strict workout plan all the time. It's just not realistic. You have to give yourself grace. And I think that's where rest days come in as well. I think rest days are so important and they've been so important for me. And I think they truly are like the reason why I have not burnt out, in the 5 or 6 years that I've been running. Because the rest days allow my body to reset. They allow me to, have a day off where I don't have to think about what workout am I gonna do or like is this food that I'm eating gonna upset my stomach for when I run or work out? It allows me to just relax. And our bodies like that. Our bodies like when we don't have to be on all the time. So just allow yourself some grace and I have to tell myself the same thing. Sometimes I need grace in my own life. And, we have to allow ourselves the wiggle room, but still show up. If you miss a workout one day or eat very unhealthily one day, don't allow it to become two. Hop back on the train, get back up again. It's okay. Don't allow those days to stack up. Be consistent. Whatever your goal is, go after it. And that's actually my next point is goals. Be consistent in your goals. If you have a goal that you want to achieve, make a plan for how you're going to achieve it and be consistent with it. If you want to run a 5K in a specific amount of time, then form your life around that. Well, not your whole life, obviously, but like form your training around that so that you can make it possible and be consistent with it. It's not about being perfect. And I'll say that time and time again, like it's not about being perfect. None of this is about being perfect. It's about showing up every time. And, some days your legs are going to feel like they're just really heavy. They're dragging. You're not feeling great. You're just tired, but you show up anyways. And, I think that when you do show up, you'll never regret showing up. And I can confidently say that in my whole entire life. Anytime I've ever shown up for something physically and pushed my body, I have never regretted it. You'll never regret getting better, I believe. And I've seen that so many times. So if you have a goal, chase after it, and be consistent with it. Don't allow it to just be a dream that's impossible to reach. Chase after it. Go after what you want. Go after your dreams. Don't just let them sit there and, be just in the back of your head. If you want to do something, do it. And also don't try to take just huge steps toward it. I think that's also something that I wanted to really capture because, the small percentages add up to big percentages. I said that in one of my other episodes, but the small consistent steps are going to get you farther than leaps that you do every once in a while. It's like, if you were to run around a track, but you were only doing, huge leap jumps, you're going to get tired way faster than if you would just go around that lap taking small steps, because the small steps are not going to make you tired. And that's the same thing with burnout and consistency. If you're taking small steps each day towards your goal, toward whatever it is that you're working toward, you're not going to get burnt out. But if you're trying to take these huge steps, if you're going way too far, if you're restricting your food, if you're, training too hard to the point that it's too much, you will get burnt out. It's inevitable if you're taking it too hard. So take small steps. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. Small percentages add up to big percentages. And it's simple, but it's true. Don't overdo it. If you're wanting to get into exercise and you haven't been before, don't go from 0 to 100. You can't go from not running at all to running a 100-mile race in one day. You need to take small steps. You need to start off running half a mile, 1 mile, maybe even walking that much. And then over time, you'll get there. You'll get to the marathon. You'll get to the ultra marathon. It's like, that is life. We have to take it step by step and just give yourself grace when maybe you can't do it right now, but you will be able to in a month, in a year, if you stay consistent. Next, I wanted to talk about consistency with change. I think change is something that's really hard for all of us, especially when it's ourselves who need to be changing. If there's a flaw in us that we need to maybe correct, it can be really hard to do that. But I think, again, just this word grace, it's important to just keep that in mind, because you're not going to go from the person you are right now to a completely different person tomorrow. You have to take small steps. Consistency, consistency, consistency. Over and over again. You have to just keep showing up. And if you want change in something, you need to work daily towards that. If you have something in your life that you want to be different, you need to take small steps towards that each day. And I think you'll be incredibly amazed with how different your life can be in a month, in 2 months, half a year, full year. You will be a completely different person if you are just putting your best self forward and going for who you want to be. I saw this YouTube video the other day, one of my favorite YouTubers, Luke Hopkins. If you haven't watched him, you should. He wrote out a 10-year plan for his life of just goals and ways he wanted to be different and just the person he wanted to be in 10 years. And it's amazing to see how much he accomplished. He's about 8 years in. He wrote that 8 years ago. But you look back on it, and you can see how much he's changed in that time. And that's because he was consistent with his training. He was showing up even when he didn't want to. And he's a completely different person than he was 8 years ago. And that's the story I want to have in my own life as well. I want to look back on my life in 8 years and realize that I am leaps and bounds ahead of where I am right now. And that doesn't mean you have to discredit where you are right now. You can still be proud of yourself. I like who I am, but there's always room for improvement. There's always further steps you can take. There's always changes you can make to be better for yourself and for the people around you. And in 10 years, I hope I'm a completely different person in the best way possible. And I believe that with consistent small steps each day, I will be a different person, and I'll love that person as well. Next, I wanted to talk about relationships. Now, I'm not talking about just romantically. I'm talking about any relationship you have, whether it's a sibling, a romantic partner, a friend, whoever it is. I believe that relationships need to be taken slowly and they need to be consistent. If you text a friend once a year, your friendship is not going to be as strong as if you text them every week and you're taking steps to hang out with them. You are being consistent in your communication with them. You need to be consistent and you need to show up. That's how relationships work. Relationships are with two people who are working towards the same goal, and that is connecting and being closer with each other and communicating well, right? So with that, I think it's important to talk about rupture and repair. This is an idea that me and my dad talk about often, because even as a, child to parent relationship, that's still a relationship and you need to be consistent in that as well. And we talk about it all the time because ultimately as humans, we're going to fight with each other. We're going to disagree. We're going to miscommunicate because that's who we are. We're flawed and we don't understand each other sometimes. But I think it's important to have this idea of rupture and repair. Rupture and repair really is when you get in a fight, there's going to be a rupture in the relationship. There's going to be a dent or a crack. But it's the idea that when that happens, you don't freak out. You don't go crazy. Instead, you work together and you repair it. And ultimately, that makes you grow stronger through it. And I think me and my dad have seen this so many times. Of course, as a daughter to father relationship, there's going to be issues. We're going to disagree on things. It just is what it is. But that idea of this isn't the end of a relationship. This just means we have to work at it. We have to work every single day at understanding each other better and learning from each other's mistakes, and just pursuing a better connection with that person. And I think that is so important. We have to understand that just because we get in a fight with someone, just because there's a rupture in the relationship, that doesn't mean that it's automatically the end. And I'm not saying that if you're being treated badly and you're in a toxic relationship, I'm not saying that you need to stay just because you can try to repair it. I'm not saying that. If you're in a bad relationship that's not feeding you, maybe you need to leave. Maybe that's the best thing. But what I am saying is, if the relationship is worth fighting for and that person is wanting to take accountability for their actions and wanting to grow a better relationship with you, then put the effort in, you know? If you guys are both wanting to grow and get closer to each other and grow a relationship, work towards it. Work daily towards that. And I keep saying it, but daily, every single day, you need to be working toward it. You can't be inconsistent with relationships because ultimately, if you are, that person is just going to go find someone else. That person is going to find someone who shows them how much they care every day. You know, be consistent. Tell the people you love that you love. Text the people you love. Show effort. You know, we're in this day and age of nonchalance, and let me tell you, I'm not a fan. We need to show the people we love that we love them. Be consistent. Show up for your friends. Show up for your family. Show up for your partner every day. Not just when you feel like it. Not just when you're motivated. Consistency is not about motivation. Next, I wanted to talk about mental health. I think mental health is a very tricky subject, but if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you know that I do like to talk about mental health. And again, you have to have grace for yourself. There are going to be days, whatever you're dealing with your mental health, if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, it's like there are going to be days where you just truly feel horrible. You're not going to want to get out of bed, or you're going to be extremely anxious. But are you trying? Are you working every day towards getting out of that bad headspace, that negative headspace, Or if you're dealing with anxiety and you really want to see change in it, be consistent with doing things that make you happy, that are going to help you get out of that space. Find things that relax you. If you're feeling depressed and you're in this really bad headspace and you want to get out, each day work towards finding things that make you happy, that fulfill your soul. And I think over time, you'll see that each day you're digging yourself out of this hole a little bit more. And you have to give yourself grace for the days where it's just hard, because it's going to be sometimes. And sometimes it's just not going to feel good. And you're not going to want, to get out sometimes. Sometimes you're just going to want to give up and allow your mental health struggles to take over, but don't do that. Be consistent. Stay working on it, because I promise you the other side of that is so much brighter and so much healthier. And even now, I think that I'm on the other side of my really, really bad anxiety, but I know that there are still days where I'm going to be extremely anxious and I'm going to be in my head and I'm going to be sad and just feeling down, but that's okay. It's about consistency. If you have more good days than bad days, acknowledge that. That's important. It's not about being perfect every day. It's not about being happy, go lucky every day. That's not reality. It's about working hard every day towards the person you want to be, And lastly, I wanted to talk about consistency in your faith. Now, this is one of the hardest consistencies there is, I believe, because sometimes it can be hard as a Christian to read your Bible every day, to do things, because everything about the world and what the world believes in contradicts what the Bible tells us we should be like. The Bible says that we can only bow down to one God, and that is God himself. But the world tells us we need to bow down to our phones. We need to bow down to alcohol. We need to party all the time. We need to be cussing. And it's like, that's a huge contradiction. And there are so many things. And ultimately, to be consistent in your faith means to go against the world. That's the reality. You can't bow down to God and to the world at the same time. You just can't. It's impossible, because the world and God believe in different things. and you have to choose. And if you choose God, be consistent. I think it's really hard. It's hard to be consistent. It really is. And I see this every day in my own life. Some days I don't want to read the Bible because I'm just not feeling like it. I might just be tired, but it's about consistency. It's about reading even when you don't want to. And even when it's a confusing part of the Bible, sometimes you're not going to understand it perfectly, but you taking steps towards that, you taking the time to read, that is going to still change your soul because you're filling your body and your mind with the words of Christ. And that is so important. The Bible says take up your cross daily. It doesn't say take up your cross every Sunday or every Sunday and Wednesday if you go to, like a kid's service or something. It doesn't say take up your cross when you feel like it. It says take up your cross daily. And I believe that we need to be doing that. We need to be in our Bible daily. We need to be praying daily, not just when we feel like it, not just when we're motivated. Again, consistency is not the same thing as motivation. We might not feel motivated to do it, but we need to do it anyways because, there's going to be a day of judgment and, that day's not going to wait up for you. So do it now. Pray now. Read your Bible now. And I know it's easier said than done, and I'm not perfect in this either. So I don't want you guys to think that. I just think that I'm perfect because there are days when I don't read my Bible and I don't pray the way I should. But it's about consistency. If you forget one day, the next day, get back to it. The next day, pray. Do those things. Don't allow the days to add up when you're not working on it. Work towards a better relationship with God every day. One of the greatest examples of consistency that I've ever seen in my own life was last year. Me and my dad did the Bible in a year, and I have done plenty of hard things in my life. I think that I do a lot of hard things, but I truly believe that reading that Bible in a year was one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life. And it seems ridiculous, but it is crazy to think about being consistent for 365 days straight. It is hard. It's hard to show up every day and read the Bible. Some parts of the Bible are not glamorous. If you know, you know. If you've read Deuteronomy, you know it's not fun. There are parts of the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, where it can be really hard to stay engaged. It can be hard to have that motivation to read, but it's about consistency. It's about showing up when you don't want to. It was hard, but I did it, and I think it showed me a truly valuable lesson about consistency because my relationship with God has grown exponentially since I started that challenge, and I'm still going now, reading my Bible as much as I can. And with that being said, that was a super consistent thing that I did. But I think what allowed me to do that was accountability. Now, accountability needs to be taken in every aspect of your life, I believe. I think that God created us for community, and I think that community is meant to push us towards our best self. And I think in every single aspect that I talked about today, I think accountability is required with the working out aspect. Get an accountability partner. Get someone who can work out with you. Get, someone who can help you with your diet and be there for you and keep you accountable on the days where maybe you fall short and you're not eating what you should be or you're not working out the way you should be. Find someone to do it with you. For me, that's my dad. Even when we're not working out together, we're talking about the workouts that we did. We're talking about that pretty much every day. And that's so important because when you're doing it with someone else, it's a lot easier. It's easy to fall down and not get back up when you're by yourself. It's easy to fail those goals that you have. That's the second topic we talked about was goals. Tell your goals to someone. Allow them to keep you accountable when you're not taking steps towards your goal. If you have a goal and you tell someone, but then nothing in your life is kind of pushing you towards that goal, allow that person to tell you that. Allow that person to keep you accountable in that because that will help you achieve your goal so much faster and so much easier. And with change, If you want something to change in your life, tell someone. Allow that person to keep you accountable. If they're not seeing the change, ask them what you should be doing better. Ask them what you should be doing differently in order to make that change. And relationships, relationships is the easiest one to have an accountability partner for, because a relationship is between two people. So, both people should be holding each other accountable in that. If I have something that my dad did that's frustrating me, or I feel like he's not doing well, I can talk to him about that, and vice versa. If he's seeing something in me that's not healthy and good, then he can talk to me about it. That's a relationship. That's a connection that you guys are working towards, and that's accountability. You need to be able to take accountability and give it. If someone asks you to keep them accountable, do it. Don't let them off easy. Hold their feet to the fire in those moments. And of course, allow them grace, but keep them accountable in faith. Find someone in your life who will do Bible studies with you, who will pray with you, who will walk beside you in your faith journey. It's so important, and iron sharpens iron. If you're seeing someone else who's in their Bible more than you, that's going to motivate you to do more. If you see someone who's praying and they're being very consistent in their prayer, that's going to motivate you to pray more. And that's exactly what it was like when me and my dad were reading the Bible in the air together. We kept each other accountable. When he had days where he was getting behind, or he forgot to read, or vice versa, it's like the other person can keep you accountable. The other person can push you to do that. And I truly believe that if I wasn't doing the Bible in a year with my dad or with someone else who was consistent, I don't believe I would have finished. And just because, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I don't know exactly what Bible verse that is, but it says that in the Bible. And we can want to be consistent in our minds, but the flesh is weak. We can want to wake up early the next morning and go work out, but the flesh is weak. We're tired. We're not going to want to do it. That's why accountability helps so much, because that person can say, hey, I know you don't want to do it, but you're going to do it anyways, because I'm here for you and we're in this together and we're doing it together. And accountability is one of the best things that we can use. We can use accountability as a tool to make ourselves better. It's not shame. It's not if you mess up on something or you aren't taking the right steps needed. It's not, well, you need someone to shame you. No, this is not shame. This is, they love you and they care for you and they want the best for you. So they are going to keep you accountable. They're going to push you towards that. And that is so important. And those accountability partners need to be in every aspect of your life. And they need to be honest with you. And you need to be honest with them. But that's how good relationships build. And that's how change is made over time. With that being said, I think that is all I have to say about consistency. I really enjoyed this episode, and I hope you guys take steps towards consistency in every aspect of your life. And I hope you are aware of how far you've come if you have been consistent in an area of your life. Give yourself grace for when you maybe aren't doing so well, but work at it every day. Work every day at becoming the person you want to be in 10 years. I love you guys, and I love doing these episodes, and I hope that we're all growing every day, and I hope that we're all consistent. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow if you aren't already. Share this to anyone who you feel like would enjoy this episode as well, and I'll see you guys next time. That's the scoop.